All right, very good, right on time. So today we're going to start chapter 10, working groups. Couple announcements. Your final project report is due next Friday. It's pretty soon, so November the 13th. So please, if you have any questions, ask them by this week so that I have some time to go over it and then give you some more detailed feedback. If you send me the questions like days ahead, I might just give you a couple sentences and might have a brief look at your question and your report. So give me like a week so I have time to review it. Right. For your end of semester evaluation, it's gonna be on this website. They got rid of PICA for some reason. So you can just go to this link. I embedded the link to this thing. And the instruction is here. I'm gonna just click. How many of you know this? AEFIS? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like this when you clicked on it. You will need to click continue and then usually it doesn't jump right to this sign in page. You have to click and then it goes here and then you can sign in. I don't know how it works for you guys when I sign in. It shows that I have a class and then there's a survey, but I don't get to look at what the survey looks like. So it's kind of different from PICA. Try this out and let me know if you have any questions or whether it works or not. This will serve as a quiz grade and 1 extra credit. So you remember there's 1 week I forgot to give you quiz? Yeah, so this will serve as that quiz, the extra quiz. At the end, we'll still have 12 quizzes. You drop 4 of the lowest. So yeah, let me know how this works. Okay, so today we're going to talk about group formation and group performance. So now I'm going to give you some scenarios and you tell me whether this is a social group or not. People in an elevator. No? Okay. People in a classroom. Yes? Depends. Okay. What about people in a broken elevator who must figure out how to escape? That's a group, right? Okay. People in a class who work together on a project. Okay, very good. So they're not just in a classroom with no purpose or no reasons. Okay, very good. So you kind of get the idea of what a social group is. So an aggregate, this is a set of individuals who happen to be in the same place at the same time. So something like people in the subway, people waiting at the bus stop. That will be an aggregate. Categories, that's a set of people who share similar characteristics, such as racial categories. You might share similar characteristics. Can't pronounce. But you might not identify as part of the group. Does that make sense? Okay, very good. So now can you think of any other example of an aggregate or a category?
An aggregate would be people in the elevator.
People in the elevator? Yeah, very good. Any other example? Yeah.
Is it common?
Okay, you go ahead.
Aggregate could be like people in a movie theater.
Very good, very good. Fans at a game. So would that be aggregate or categories?
I think both.
Both? Okay. Yeah, it really depends because fans at the game, it depends on are you for the same team or it's different teams. Like let's say Lakers is playing Clippers, and then are all the fans Lakers? If so, they might be a group, right? But if they're Laker fans and then Clippers fans, it might be just aggregate. All right, very good, very good. So just make sure you know the difference between aggregates and categories. Should be pretty simple. Next, we have social group. That's when 3 or more people who interact and influence each other because of shared needs or goals. When we have 2 people, we usually call it a diet. We don't usually call it a group. For example, a family of parents and kids, we'll call it a social group. What else? What else would you call? Would you call it a social group?
Sports team.
Sports team. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Anything else? There should be a lot. Aggies. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the key point to know is that social groups, they share entitativity, which is the perception or feeling that they are in a group. Right. So we kind of talked about aggregates, categories, and social group. Do you have any questions on how we differentiate them? Did you raise your hand or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's my hair.
Gotcha. Okay. So entitativity is determined by similarity. So people are more likely to form a group when they have more in common. And entitativity is also determined by communication, interdependence, and group structure. So a group, they become more stable with those factors. A diet is the weakest form of a group, even though we don't usually call it a group, because once a person leaves the group doesn't exist anymore. Okay? And lastly, is determined by social identity. This is when group members define themselves in part of the group. All right. Any questions on this slide? All right. So for group formation, we have 4 stages. The first stage is forming stage. This is when a new group is formed. The second stage is the storming stage. This is when group members try to make their ideas known. The norming stage is when the norms or roles of the group are developed. Then we have performing stage, and that's when group members establish a routine and work together. And lastly, we have the adjourning stage. That's when the group is about to end. I'm going to give you one example. I'm using the class as an example. So at the beginning of the semester, I asked you to form a group for the team project. That will be the forming stage. Right? And then when you guys are trying to define what kind of topic you want to do for your project, that will be the storming stage. Everyone is kind of doing the brainstorm, right? Throwing out ideas and then decide which idea is the best for your group. After that will be the norming stage. So roles and norms are formed. You're trying to decide which team member is going to work on which part, and how are you going to do that? right? So that's the roles and the norms. And then the performance stage is when you decide whether you're going to work on this once a week together, or you're going to work on it individually and then meet together once a week. So that will be establish a routine and then work together. At the end of the semester, after all the project, the report, the presentation, when there's no other purpose for the group, that's when the group is about to end, right? Okay, now can you think of any example in real life that uses this 4-stage model? Oh, actually it's 5 stages. Why did I type 4? 5 stages.
I think you put 4 stages because in the textbook it groups it as 4 and it puts norming, performing together.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Let's do 5. Why would you put them together but not the other? Did they explain?
I don't know.
Okay.
They did a little bit, but
Mhm.
it wasn't super clear. They just said that it's sort of cyclical, but also you could jump around as a group.
Yeah.
As time goes on, you don't have to follow these in order.
Yeah.
So norming and performing tend to occur together. When you're forming routine, you're also
Uh-huh.
forming a norm in routine.
Oh, sorry
So
about that.
it's sort of the way I can see them together, but not.
Yeah, because when I was doing it, I was thinking storming stage and the norming stage can be together too, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
When you decide a topic and then you decide who's gonna work on what.
They definitely
It's pretty, yeah.
overlap.
Yeah, so let's do 5 stages, and you don't have to like follow the timeline or the order exactly, but those are the common stages that we see in group formation. Can you think of any other example?
Like a sports team.
A sports team. Can you elaborate? on
It's
your
like
stage?
when you make the team, then you're forming the group.
Okay.
But then it's eventually going to end when the season ends.
Yeah. I guess for a sports team, how would you know when was the storming stage, when it's the norming stage?
Like when you're deciding what positions people are going to be.
Okay. So which one would that be? Norming?
So like storming would be like different people wanting to be certain positions,
Mm.
but then norming, performing would be the deciding who's
Okay.
going to live where.
Yeah. Very good. And then performing is kind of like when they practice or play the game
Yeah.
together. Okay. Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Trying to figure out if this would be a good example. Maybe like high school friends or a clique. So at the beginning of high school, they start to form a group,
Mhm.
and they sort of throughout the years, maybe the group changes a little bit, but
Yeah.
these are the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end of when high school ends, if you have that adjourning stage at the very end, it's
Mhm.
in the middle, they sort of pass through all of these sort of things.
Yeah. During your daily activities, it's very easy to have like storming stage and all those stages based on the activities that you engage in, right? Very good. Also, a lot of times groups, they can end before those stages. Like maybe during the storming stage, they find out their ideas don't match, and then they don't want to be the group, and then the group might end there. Same goes with norming stage and performing stage. If anything doesn't go well, the group might end. Okay. Any questions on this part? All right. Okay. So, does it take much to form a group? For example, if I just flip a coin and then I split the classroom in half, do you think that's enough to form a group? Yeah? Very good, very good. So, yes, so the people, we found that people will favor their in-group even though they are split by a coin toss. Very simple. You don't need to share any values. It's very arbitrary. So this is based on the minimal groups paradigm. And it suggests that even arbitrary and virtually meaningless distinctions between groups can trigger a tendency to favor one's own group at the expense of others. What they did is they had this study like they toss a coin and then split the class in two, and then they ask them if they are provided $2, would they split evenly between their own group and the other group, or they will give more money to their own group compared to the other group? Most people will say, yeah, I'm gonna give more money to our own group, even though it was just a coin toss determined group. All right, very good. So groups are easily formed. One question that I want to ask you guys is, why do people form groups? Oh, yeah.
I guess it makes it easier to accomplish tasks because then you have more people working on the same thing. So I feel like a lot of people have a common goal, like whether or not that's a class project or it's a sport team. So it makes sense to form a group to accomplish your goal.
Very good. So it'd be easier to achieve something, be more efficient, right? Okay, very good. Yeah.
To create belonging.
Very good. Create belonging. Very good. Uh-huh.
I'd say there's sort of an innate biological reason to sort of gravitate towards human connection.
Yeah, very good. So those are on points. So from an evolutionary standpoint, is that people have better chance of survival if they form a group. Okay. It also fulfills basic human needs, which is the need to belong. As social animals, as human, we want to have a sense of belonging, and forming a group can give us that. It also provides us positive affection and social support. It also helps to define who we are. It gives us social roles, which is the shared expectation in a group about how you're supposed to behave. It also gave us information about social norms that you learned in a group, right? You guys remember what social norms are, right? Okay, very good. So next, I'm going to show you a short video. It's the prison study. I know we kind of mentioned it before, but I didn't have time to show you the whole clip. But now I'm going to show you a short vision, and then think about this, and I'm going to ask you some questions so that we can discuss afterwards.
In 1971, in the basement of the psychology department of Stanford University, a mock prison was created. It rivaled all social psychology experiments in controversy.
Shortly after I finished this Stanford prison study, Milgram embraced me and said, "I'm so happy that you did this." He said, "Because now you can take off some of the heat that he's had to bear alone of having done the most unethical study."
Although this experiment is over 30 years old, its enduring power has been underscored by the events at Abu Ghraib.
When we got to Abu Ghraib, it was eerie. People were being told to rough up Iraqis that wouldn't cooperate. I mean, they're torturing, they're abusing detainees. You're looking at the situation thinking, they've condoned this, but why? And if it wouldn't have been for those photos, no one would have ever believed what was going on over there.
When I first saw the pictures, immediately a sense of familiarity struck me, because I knew that I had been there before. I had been in this type of situation. I knew what was going on in my mind.
The photographs were strikingly familiar to the photographs that we had taken, many of the photographs I had taken in the prison study.
We didn't do any of the stuff that you see in Abu Ghraib, where they, get into a big pile or something like that. But I certainly subjected them to all kinds of humiliations. I don't know where I would have found myself. Given enough time, we could have got there.
When the images of the abuse and torture in Abu Ghraib were revealed, immediately the military went on the defensive, saying, it's a few bad apples, When we see somebody doing bad things, we assume they're bad people to begin with. But what we know in our study is there are a set of social psychological variables that can make ordinary people do things they never could imagine doing.
All right. So did you notice at the beginning, the assistant Bartle, he mentioned something like Milgram said he was glad that he did this study. Do you remember Milgram's study?
The shock study.
Yeah. So I just find it funny that, do you think this is ethical? No. So why do you think that after Milgram's study, it's already controversial enough, he still did this? He knew it was controversial, right, to begin with.
I don't think he expected it to get so bad so
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, so that's my assumption too. He probably didn't know that
Now
it's going to end up like that, right? So how many have you seen the movie? Okay, but you kind of know what happened, right? And you know the results. It caused harm, psychological and physical harm to both sides, the guards and the prisoners. Okay, so do you think that was ethical? No? Yeah.
Can you like go to jail for that kind of thing?
For this kind of
Like, if you
experiment?
Have like an unethical experiment, is that illegal?
I don't know about now. So IRB, they're not laws. They're school rules. Interestingly, I don't even know what if I violate
there
that.
I know there was clips of them with like assault,
Uh-huh.
but I think that if a murder had occurred, then yeah, probably. But
Yeah.
there's like this really gray area between we need to learn about this so we can prevent it, and then also you gotta stop it early because like they planned it for what, like 2 weeks, and they stopped after like a week or like 5 days or something.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact dates, but it's long enough. People wanted to leave, but they wouldn't let them.
Yeah. That
Yeah, so we treat them very seriously. Let's say somehow we accidentally linked a participant's information to their survey. It's a huge deal for us because it might be potential like leak of information. People might identify this person even though the information might not be like as you think. It might be super sensitive, or maybe just I don't know, your height, your past relationship. Still, we don't want to do that. And I don't know what happens if we just violate it and people sue us. I don't know. I actually gotten several complaints from my study. So if you remember, my study was love. So I studied the emotion of love. And in order to study that, I need to elicit the emotion of love, right? Did I talk about how I elicit that? Okay. No? Yeah?
I don't remember.
Okay. So how would you elicit love?
I don't know.
Or how, based on my description, how did I elicit love?
Wasn't it video?
Yeah, so can you think of any other ways to elicit love in a laboratory environment? So if you want to design a study, you want to study the emotion of love.
Perhaps foster a sense of intimacy, or like asking personal questions.
Okay, you think you asking the participants personal questions.
It depends on where you're trying to direct the love.
Okay,
So if you're trying to get it between two participants, then they would ask each other personal
Gotcha.
questions to create a sense of intimacy.
gotcha. So you recruit the couple. Okay. Yeah. That's a good idea. Actually, in my undergrads, we did that. We hired couples to the lab, and then we asked them to sit in a laboratory, but it doesn't look like a laboratory. It's got furniture, pretty relaxing, and then they just sit there. We let them talk for 20 minutes, and when the conversation comes to like a natural end, we then come in, we ask them about their emotions, and afterwards, because we videotape their behavior, afterwards we go back and analyze their facial expression, behaviors, and then their personal surveys, like how did they value their relationship and the conversation. Very good. Can you think of any other idea? Oh, hold on. Not ethical, but it reveals a lot about human nature. I agree. It's a lot of studies, they're not ethical, but we learn a lot from them. And honestly, some like cynical part of me, I would think, why can't we do that? It's we gotta be ethical.
The studies that are cited in the book are like from the 60s and 70s, and you can tell just if they include the word shock, it's going to be 60s or 70s.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know about the monkey study. They put the monkeys, separate them from their moms, and then see whether they like the wire monkey mother or the cloth monkey mother. Is so ethical. But anyway, for the study of love, I also did asking them to write about it. So write about their past experience. So I want them to think about it. Imagine this time that you feel intimate with your romantic partner and write about it. And hopefully that will elicit their emotions, right? And then I use videos. So films, they are quick. It's very quickly to elicit emotions, but it's also more intense because you are exposed to the stimulus. It's not like you're thinking about your past experience, right? So I've gotten a lot of complaints. Not a lot, but more than usual, saying, I don't want to watch that. It caused psychological harm to me. So what they did, they will go to the department head, the IRB. We also have participants protection service here. So what you need to do is you go to them and then explain what happened and tell them what's the precaution, were the participants warned. So it's a very long process. But think about it. Video, you're exposed to that pretty much anywhere on the internet. It's very easily get exposed to that kind of video. So even that minimal harm can cause a lot of trouble. So what's your question, right? Whether it's like what happens if this studies. Short answer is I don't know. They surely got into a lot of trouble. They have to explain to the school, the IRB, and the public now. So yeah, but that's interesting. I don't want to try it.
Career suffered a little bit too, because any psychological thing he did afterwards was like extra like heightened of like was it ethical for everything he did afterwards? I think he studies happiness now too. Like he's completely gone just so he doesn't have to deal with it again. But I think for a while his career really suffered.
Yeah, I think his girlfriend left him because of this.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
There's definitely some consequences, even if it wasn't legal.
Yeah. So interesting discussion. So I want you to think about. Do you think that the people made that place violent, or in any other situation, do people make a place violent, or does the place make people violent? It kind of goes back to, do you think that people are born good or evil, right? Your math is falling down. So, what do you guys think? Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I think the place kind of sets up people to be violent, but I think honestly it's like people that are making the place violent.
Okay, can you give me some example, like using the prison study or any other example? How?
Like in the prison experiment, like the way it was set up was elicited to make people be violent. Like they assigned them guard or prisoner. So it was set up for people to be violent. But at the
Okay.
end of the day, it was people who made the decision to engage in those kind of activities.
So, do you think that people just assume that prison is a violent place, or do you think they kind of learn it on the way?
I think a little bit of both. Like, I think most people think of, like, for instance, the guards probably thought, oh, I have to be violent because I'm a guard. Prisons are a violent place.
Okay.
But then as they started engaging in violence, it became more of a habit.
Mm-hmm. The reason I ask you is that they're not violent right away. So, what they have learned is throughout the study, they learned that I actually have power to do this. And then they have a sense of power, and then they experience it. Can I do this? Oh yeah, maybe I can go further. Maybe further. So that's why I asked you, do you think coming in they already assumed it's a violent place, so I can act violent? Or it's because they got the power, then gradually their behavior become more violent? What do you think?
I think it's because they got the power and then they became more violent as time went on.
Okay. Yeah. Can be both, right? Maybe some people maybe assume that it's a violent place. Maybe I can do some of this, and then they realize they have the power, and then they behave even more. Yeah, there's no correct answer. I'm just trying to brainstorm. And what about you guys? What do you guys think?
I think in that like situation, the people made the place violent because like they could have been the guards without being violent. Like it could have just gone well if everyone had like stayed tame.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are situations that can make people violent. Like if you get drafted to war and you're not a violent person, you're not gonna go and just be peaceful. Like
That's a very good example, or a very good argument for how situation can influence a person's behavior. Very good. Can you think of nowadays examples? Like, there be a lot of violent behavior nowadays. What do you guys think? I'm going to give you a controversial topic. Racist people. Let's say we see this racist people, this group of people, they act aggressively towards another group of people. Do you think that it's the situation that they're in, like the environment or the place that they live in, make them violent? Or do you think it's they just growing up, they are this kind of person, and then they reinforce the environment to make that place violent? What do you guys think? Yeah.
I think part of it could have to do with like where you're growing up. Like if you live in a very racist place, then you're more likely to become racist yourself. But ultimately, it's your decision whether or not you're going to be racist. So I would say it's more on the person.
Okay. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I would agree. I would also say like, I think the situation can affect like your personal beliefs to like outwardly be violent on other people. Then I think that's definitely like a personal fault.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a very relevant topic, right? Especially nowadays in the United States, we have so many different groups of people. It's very diverse. What we have discussed, like as grad students or researchers, we sometimes talk about this. I don't know if you guys agree, but what we think is that, let's say, some people they grow up in this environment. It's a very small town. I don't know if I told you guys about this. It's always like deja vu for me when you have so many discussions about this. So if you grow up in this small town, and everyone, let's say everyone's white, they don't know any black people, they don't know any Asian people, and then suddenly Asian people come and they're gonna ask some questions. It might be offensive. They might ask, do you guys eat bananas? Like some racist questions, but they might not realize that, and the Asian people feel so offended. We think that's because of the environment. They're not aware. But in situations that they are aware of the situation, they know they're causing harm to other people, that's more of the person, right? So I guess my point is, I don't know if you guys agree, is that sometimes we suddenly accuse someone as being racist. We don't know whether that behavior is because they lack of the information, so it's unconscious behavior, or they intentionally to be racist, right? I think it's not very rational to be judged too quickly, be like, hey, you did that, so you're racist. That's my opinion. I don't know if you guys agree, or if you guys have any other thoughts about this.
I think it's a bit of both. It has
Mhm.
to do with attribution.
Mhm.
So a place could make a person violent if that place is already labeled as violent.
Mhm.
You just sort of go along with the script of that place. I think in sociology it's called labeling theory.
Mhm.
They sort of figured out through when they diagnose a child with ADHD in the classroom, if the teacher knows they're diagnosed with ADHD, they may treat them differently than other students.
Yeah.
Which could be a good thing, could also be a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think it's similar with the place. Once you label it as violent, which the people label it as violent, then it sort of is a cycle of following what following what it was originally called.
Yeah, it kind of reinforced, right?
Yeah, it
The
reinforces.
idea. Yeah. Yep. Again, I think the best thing is to communicate. Yeah, in a lot of situations. I don't know, sometimes you can't really communicate, like the prison guard study, even though they said that they don't want to be in this, they didn't listen, so. All right, so quick question, which would you rather do in front of the group? Would you rather solving a math equation in front of the class, or would you rather tie your shoelaces?
Tie your shoelaces.
Yeah, right? Pretty, yeah, most people would say tie your shoelaces, unless you are a genius in math and you enjoy doing math and you feel proud after you complete math questions. But most people will choose to tie their shoelaces. And we're going to talk about why is that? So social facilitation is the tendency to perform better in the presence of others. I think we mentioned this, is the triplet study. They found that cyclists ride faster when there are other people around. They can be either their teammates or their competitor. Either way, cyclists will ride faster, or even audience. That's called social facilitation. Do you think that it applies to other situations or other animals? Yeah? So they had this very fun study, is they found in animals like ants, they will dig more earth when they're around other ants. Fruit flies, they will try to prey more when there are the fruit flies around. And centipedes, they run faster when they're with other centipedes. And this is pretty funny. Dogs, they eat faster when there are other dogs around. I don't know if you guys experienced that, but I remember my roommates had dogs, and when they're alone, when they have their own bowl, they kind of just casually eat. But when they're with each other, they start to like go at it. It's pretty funny. So social facilitation works in a lot of situations, especially for social animals, right? And we also have social inhibition. That's the tendency to perform more poorly in the presence of others. So Allport, he did this study, is they asked students to refute some philosophical argument. So it's pretty hard. A lot of times it's like ethical. you have to stand up points and then find arguments. They found that students perform better alone than in front of a group. And can you think of any other example that people actually perform worse when they're around other people?
Like sometimes in classes you'll be like assigned something to work on together, and I feel like groups work really fast and kind of like don't always think things through thoroughly because they're just all trying to like work fast together. I don't know.
So do you mean that when you're assigned to a group and then the group doesn't work as fast, or the individual in the
Like the
group?
group doesn't perform like, they don't take time and effort to do it, they kind of just perform poorly to get it over with.
Gotcha. So people are like, whatever, and then everyone's kind of like whatever, and then at the end, it's kind of like a social discussion. And then if I ask you to think individually, there might be more fruitful or in-depth discussions. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, very good. So that's actually what we're going to talk about next class. That's social loafing. And we kind of mentioned it before, is that when you're in a group, you tend to spend less effort. But here is, even though you spent the same amount of effort, you still perform worse when you're in front of other people. Yeah.
I took a sociology course in high school, and he liked to use us as guinea pigs for his
Mhm.
little experiments.
Mhm.
And so at the beginning of the course, in order to foster like friendships and like group
Mhm.
rapport, he had us do this experiment. What do we want to call it an experiment? He had us go outside, and there was 2 lines on there, and we split into 2 groups, and each group had to figure out how to get from one line to the other using 2 pieces of cardboard. And it was sort of like the middle was lava, you couldn't touch it, you could only touch the cardboard. You would go from one line to the other, but you had to get your whole group across.
Mhm.
And so both groups came up with their own idea,
Mhm.
and we had like 20 seconds to come up with the idea. Like,
Mhm.
it was not a long time to come up
Yeah.
with it. So one group, there was one person who already knew this sort of thing. They did it at a church camp, and so they did it really quickly, but my group did not.
Uh-huh.
So we ended up trying to like piggyback each other across the
Mhm.
lava river.
Mhm.
We did not do well, and the other
Yeah.
group won because they got across faster.
Mhm.
But perhaps social inhibition here, because not only were we being watched by the other team and our teacher, but also we didn't get through very well.
Yeah, so if we throw aside like previous experience, you said the other group already knew
Yeah.
about, it could be other people watching, and then you see the other group is doing better, and then you don't know what to do, and then it kind of inhibit your performance. Yeah, very good. So the general rule is that for social facilitation, that's when performing a simple or well-learned task. But for social impairment, is to perform a difficult or novel task. Kind of easy to understand, right? So, but why is that? Why do we perform better on easier tasks when other people are around, but poorly on harder tasks when other people are around? Yeah.
I think people get afraid of messing up, and so they're more likely to mess up just because like you're nervous and you start to overthink everything if you're performing a new task or a difficult task.
Why people wouldn't be afraid of messed up if it's a simple task?
I think because you know it super well, so you're not as afraid of messing up. Because
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I know how to do this. I've done it, 1,000 times before, so I
Okay.
can do it well.
Yeah, so you're less anxious about it. Yeah, very good, very good. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's like, I think it's a confidence thing, because if it's a simple thing that you're like good at, you're like, oh, I'm gonna show off to these people. But if
Yeah.
it's something you're bad at, you're like,
Mhm.
wait, people are watching me.
Like the pride, right?
Right.
Yeah. Very good, very good. So emotions are very important here. I have no idea how to pronounce this. Do you guys have any idea? Zhejiang. This person thinks that it's the arousal is making the difference, right? So they think that when other people are around, we are more likely to be more aroused, just because people are watching us. And this increase in dominant response tendency. So what you guys mentioned, for easier task, it's easy. So you're more likely to perform as usual or even better when other people are around. But if it's hard or it's a new task, you're more likely to mess up. So they did this basketball study. They found that for unskilled players, this is their percentage of shooting free throws. And then for skilled players, that's the percentage of shooting free throws in the study. In a crowd, the unskilled players perform worse, but the skilled players perform better at shooting free throws. So it's another example to support the idea. All right. Any questions on this? All right, we good? So why the presence of others cause arousal? That's another question. So we know that arousal could be the underlying cause, but why are we aroused when other people are around? Yeah.
I guess because there's more at stake, so you get a little bit excited. So whether or not you're good at a task, you get a little bit excited to show off. And if you're bad at a task, then you're going to get nervous that you're going to mess up. So there's still like a level of excitement, whether or not that's good or bad, if you're around other people.
Yeah. So when you say there's more at stake, what's at stake?
Well, like if you mess up, then you run the risk of like, oh, everyone's going to think I'm bad at this task. Or they might laugh at me, or I might get it wrong, and then they're not going to.
Okay.
That I'm good at this.
So is this still pride?
Yes.
Or, okay. Yeah. So they did this very funny study. They found that men run faster on a treadmill when women are watching, especially attractive women. It's kind of stupid in my opinion. But what they found is that evaluation apprehension is very important. So people are concerned how other people are viewing us. In the weight room, I don't think they did this study, but I assume that people lift more weights when other people are around. They're like, I'm strong. Yeah, it's a daily experience, but I just find it funny. I don't know why. Stupid. Oh, there's another thing. It's not related, but it's another study that they did is they found that people drive slower when there are women walking on the sidewalk because they want to look at the women. Does that make sense?
I thought you were going to say to not run them over.
Oh, no. It's they found that usually cars, so let's say they find if there's no women walking, so that's an experimenter. They found the average speed is about 35 miles per hour. And if they have experimenter, a woman who's attractive, in their opinion. Again, I think that's unethical. How are you going to find your experimenter and say, yeah, you're more attractive, so you do this experiment. And then another experimenter is like, you're not as attractive, so you do something else, you just record the speed. It's freaking unethical. But anyway, they did this study, and they found that the average speed it decreases when there's a woman walking on the side.
I wonder how they controlled for the environment too, because cars are, I mean, they would have had to be in an open area.
Oh, they did. I think they did the experiment on campus. So the speed limit is about 30, 35, and it's the same environment. It just with the experimenter and without the experimenter. Yeah, some side notes, but some, in my opinion, stupid experiments psychologists do. How much time do we have left? Oh, we got 1 minute. I'm going to talk about this very quickly. So alert and vigilance, that's we think, so evolutionary, we think other people's are less predictable. So we need to increase alertness to respond to what other people do. And lastly, is distraction. We found that sometimes this might not work on social facilitation. It might be just someone comments or okay. It's just distraction. We put our attention to other stimulus, and that's why we perform worse. All right, I think that's it. If you don't have any questions, we're right on time.
This chapter seemed to have a lot of like really weird experiments.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like we already talked about this or mentioned it in other chapters. So, like social. Yeah, in my opinion, it's harder for me to find interesting things to talk about in this chapter that we haven't talked about.
I just thought it was funny. One of the experiments covered in the book was that cockroaches run faster when other cockroaches are watching them. Like some experimenter had to build a box with a window in it,
Oh yeah.
sized for a cockroach.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like, man.
And I'm like, I'd like to see the bloopers of that. I want to see that in a movie. Like,
This is off the record, but if you get into grad school, you find a lot of grad students or psychologists, they're just weird people. They just study weird things.